Hello, and a warm welcome to our weekly show, Love Athletics. In this program, we bring you the latest highlights from our sport with expert input from different continental areas. And we're delighted to have as our guest today Jamaican journalist André Lowe.
Hi, hi Anna. Happy to be back on the program, and I must say congratulations on a program that I think is very necessary for our space, for our sport, and good job to you and the team. Happy to be back.
Thanks so much, André. It's really great to have you with us again.
Yeah, love
So
it.
the
Let's
last
go.
show we did was entirely dedicated to the World Indoors. So my first question for you is, André, who was the athlete or the event which most impressed you during the indoor season?
First of all, I think we were treated to a lot of really, really good performances by athletes right across the spectrum, across the indoor season, and that all came to a head, of course, at the World Indoor Championships in Serbia. Yulima Rojas comes to mind. She, of course, was a big star at the Tokyo Olympics, and even before that, where of course she, dropped that 15.67 meters on her way to winning that gold medal. She somehow managed to even do better in Serbia, jumping 15.74 meters. I think she got it on her final attempt too, just to add some drama to the excellent performance. Certainly one of the best performances of the indoor season. You look at the women's 100 meters, and one of my favorite athletes, Mojinga Kambunji from Switzerland, someone who has been thereabouts. She made the final in Tokyo, finished in the middle of the field, but she came here and produced an amazing 6.96 seconds to win gold at the World Indoor Championships. That makes her tied for the fourth fastest woman in the event. Tying, of course, with one of my all-time favorites, Jamaican, Merlin Ottey. And of course, for Kambunji's time was the fastest time we have seen in over 20 years. So that I think was a really, really impressive performance by her. You look at the Italian, Marcel Jacobs. A lot of persons saw what he did in Tokyo. They thought it was, a fluke or whatever. He came back and he produced, a scintillating time, 6.41 seconds. And again, only 3 persons have gone faster. And so it shows, his immense talent, his immense ability. And it tells us that, he's going to do something even more special later on this season. Now, Femke Bol. Now, the women's 400-meter hurdles is one of my favorite events in the world, just because of the level of performances that we're seeing, not from 1, not from 2, but now 3 women. Femke Bol looks like she is about to land herself in that very exclusive 51-second 400-meter hurdles club later this year, after her time 50.30 this year. Still the world lead, I believe. No, she didn't win in Belgrade, but just looking what she has accomplished over the last few years. I mean, in 2019, she was still running 52 seconds. And she made the big leap last year, brought her time down to 50.6. And we saw how that reflected in the outdoor season, where she ran 52.03 seconds. So just using that as logic and how she has been progressing over the years, it's fair to assume that this year she's definitely going to take her time into 51 seconds. And that, with Dalila Mohammed and the Olympic champion, Sydney McLaughlin, it promises. And then the others who are making a return, like a couple of Jamaicans as well, Rochelle Clayton, the bronze medalist from Doha, who just ran her first race in like 2 years after coming from injury. Was very happy with what she did here in Bermuda last weekend. So I think it's really shaping up to be perhaps, but not perhaps, definitely one of the events, to keep your eye on this year. Mondo Duplantis continues to break records. Again, he shaved some distance, or added some distance to his previous mark, going over 6.20 meters. Just 2 weeks prior to that, he did 6.19 meters. So he's continuing to impress not just outdoor, but also indoors. Now, Sharika Jackson, another Jamaican, excuse me if I'm biased, the Olympic bronze medalist in the 100 meters. Of course, she has won bronze at the Olympics, at the World Championships in 400 meters as well. One of the most talented and dynamic athletes we have in our sport. In her first indoor campaign, Anna, she ran 7.04 seconds. Now, that's the same time recorded this year, same time that Elaine Thompson, the double Olympic sprint champion, recorded this year. And it's just shy of Elaine Thompson's personal best in 60 meters, 7.02 seconds. Now, if Sharika, who is still learning the 100 meters, and for the first year is doing the 60 meters, and she's already at 7.04 seconds, what is she going to do this year in the 100 meters? Now, I can tell you what her coach, Stephen Francis, thinks. He thinks she's going to do something extremely special. And without giving away too much, let's just say that he's very expectant of her ceiling, and probably think it's a lot higher than we have seen by anybody else in recent times. We have seen some other, really, really impressive times from, let's say, lesser known quantities. Randolph Ross, I took note of him, 44.62 on the 400 meters, very fastest time. Maybe he's one to watch in the outdoor season. And Darlan Romani, I think that's his name, the Brazilian, he ran 22.5. Did 22.5 in the shot put, so again, someone to keep an eye on. But very impressive performances all around. One of the better indoor seasons I've seen in a while, I think, just given the length and breadth of performances we have seen. And it promises to deliver for us even more excitement and high performances in the outdoor season.
Definitely. And as you say, it's good to see, of course, people like Mondo Duplantis and Sydney McLaughlin. They've been top of the scene since they were very, very young. But it's good to see people like Mujinga, coming and actually winning the event. Let's not forget that Switzerland had two athletes in the final in Tokyo. So once Alia Del Ponte is back, because she had some injury problems, that's also going to be interesting. And I think it's good to have all these new faces with Femke, with Marcel Jacobs. I think it's good for the sport.
Yeah, absolutely. Track and field is one of the sports across the world that is blessed with a lot of talent right across the board. It's not reliant on any one or two big names. There are just so many people doing well, and that's credit as well to the excellent work that the coaches and the various member associations are doing, just to expand that knowledge base. And and we're seeing it now reflecting in times and distances that we didn't think were possible. We're now seeing those times and distances even earlier in the season, and it augurs well for the future of the sport. And certainly is an inspiration for the youngsters coming up. You mentioned Kambunji. I mean, she has been doing it for years, right? And yes, she has had tremendous success, relatively, but she's a world champion now, and it just shows that you just have to be consistent. You just have to stick with it, and continue to give it your honest effort, and your time, your opportunity will come. And that's what her success in Serbia has shown us.
Thank you, André. Now, the season is still young, and quite a few interesting competitions took place in the course of the last month. So here are my top picks for the last 4 weeks, starting with stadium events. And of course, the outstanding result here is the NACAC area record of 71 meters 46, which is over 234 feet and 5 inches, set by U.S. discus thrower Valerie Allman in only her second competition this year in La Jolla. The Olympic champion moved to number 15 in the all-time lists with what was the longest throw in the last 30 years. And best men's performance also came in the long throws, courtesy of another Olympic champion, Sweden's Daniel Stahl. He threw 69.11 in Chula Vista on 7 April and also holds the second and third best marks of the season. Other top performances from stadium events came in from the sprints. The first sub-10 100 meter of the year came from Ghana's NCAA second division indoor champion, Benjamin Azamati, on 25 March. And his time of 9:90 is still the world lead and a national record, as well as the seventh best African mark of all time. On the women's side, NCAA indoor champion Abby Steiner also had a great start to the outdoor season with a world-leading 10:92 in the 100 meters and third spot in the 200 with 22:38. And that was against a headwind of 5.6 meters. Namibian teenager Christine Boma, the Olympic silver medalist, holds the world lead at the distance with 22:12 and is also well placed in fifth on the shorter distance with a national record of 11.03. And Nigeria's Favour Afili, who set multiple 200-meter indoor area records this winter, continued to show strong form with a PB of 11 flat at 100 meters. And another athlete who performed very well indoors is Puerto Rico's 100-meter hurdles champion Jasmine Camacho Quinn, who was in the top four of the indoor season at 200. She went even faster outdoors and is in number 2 spot so far with 22:27, a national record. At her specialist event, Camacho Quinn took first place in the first World Athletics Continental Tour Gold event, the USATF Bermuda Games in Devonshire, Bermuda. Strong winds and humidity hindered her performance there, but it was still the top performance of the meet. And as I love it when unexpected countries achieve athletic success, I want to point out 2 interesting results. The first is the world lead in the men's long jump by India's Sri Shankar, who soared to 8:36 on 3rd April. And the 23-year-old had already placed 7th at the World Indoors. The other is not a world lead, but it is still very interesting as Egypt's Bassant Hemida on 27 March achieved an excellent 22:82 at 200 meters, placing her in 16th spot in the young seasons list. A notable achievement for a country where female sprinters had never reached this kind of level. Now, André, any performances that you were impressed with so far on the outdoor circuit?
You mentioned Jasmine Camacho Quinn. I was there. I saw that meet. I was cloaked up. Bermuda's not very tropical this time of the year, by the way, folks. Spoiler alert. She ran that time 12.67 meters in the 100-meter hurdles in negative 2.5 wind. And that was one of the tamer, the more, I'd say decent wind readings of the day. Wind was going up to negative 5.2 throughout the day. So, but for her to accomplish that, 12.67 in that sort of conditions, and not just windy, but very, very cold. It just speaks to where she is, and we see where she's at. Given her times indoors at the 200 meters, she's now improving her foot speed, and clearly she still has rhythm. She can still run those times even with the wind in her face. So it means we are definitely going to see her back at 12.2, and maybe this year once she stays healthy. Very impressed with what she did. Fred Curley has had a very busy outdoor season so far. Sub 10 already in the 100 meters, 9.99, 20.04 in the 200 meters, and 44.47 in the 400 meters. Another uber talented, wide range and dynamic athlete who is doing all the right things and preparing himself for a very important year. And I think he's also going to be doing very good things once he stays healthy. Now, Jamaica has a very strong history and tradition in the 400 meters. And a lot of persons in Jamaica, I almost said here, even though I'm now in Bermuda, a lot of persons in Jamaica are very excited about Cherokee Young. She was a very impressive junior athlete. She ran 50 flat competing on the college circuit in the 400 meters. In our history, a lot of times we see our college athletes put out very good times early, and they're not necessarily able to replicate that later on in the season because of burnout or fatigue or whatever the case is. So, we are hoping that she can replicate or improve those times later this year. And you did mention Benjamin Azamati. Very impressed with him as well. So yeah, those I would say outside of the ones that you mentioned are the performances that really stood out for me.
Thank you, Andre. So let's focus on Jamaica, because on 5 to 9 April, the Inter-Secondary School Boys and Girls Championships, better known simply as Champs, took place in Kingston, Jamaica. Now, the standout athlete was 17-year-old Karika Hill, who first took gold in the 100 meters with 11:16, faster than the under-20 race, which was won in 11:26. And with that time, she moved to 7th equal spot on the all-time list. Then she competed again 2 days later on the 100 hurdles, where she first equaled the world best of 12:89 in the heats before a huge improvement the next day in the final, where she raced to 12:71. Now, that is really one impressive young athlete. So tell us, Andre, tell us about Champs, why they're so special and how important they are for athletics in Jamaica.
It's quite simply the greatest, I would like to say, track and field festival in the world. And I'm not just saying that because I'm Jamaican. No, I've covered Olympic Games, I've covered World Championships, I've covered World Youth Championships, pretty much everything to cover in the Champions League. There's in the international track and field, there's nothing like Champs. Just for the color, just for the expectation, you know what's coming. Just for the immense pressure and what it means to a nation, right? Now we're talking about something that is over 100 years old, 112 years actually. This year's staging was the 112th year of Champs. And you look at its impact on Jamaica's track and field. The vast majority of Jamaica's best athletes have competed at Champs. No, not everybody did well at Champs. You think of Shelley and Fraser Price, Cillian Thompson, weren't big names at Champs, but they got a piece of it, right? You look at the amazing performances that we see year in, year out. We look at teenagers who are running times, posting marks that are national records for some countries, right? National senior records for some countries. You mentioned Karika Hill, of course. Who you didn't mention was Brianna Liston. 22.53 in the 200 meters in a -2.2 wind. Now, we're not talking about junior level implements or equipment. We're talking about the 200 meters, right? 22.53 over 200 meters in a -2.2 wind for a 17-year-old. Just amazing. I think what Champs does, it prepares our athletes for a high-level competition. I did mention the deep-rooted rivalries and commitment. Everything revolves around Champs. Everybody stops and pays attention during Champs Week, as you know, and having been there a couple of times. And a lot of our athletes in Jamaica have said that Champs, for them, gives far more pressure than the Olympic Games. They feel far more pressure at Champs than at the Olympic Games. And as you know, they're already being exposed to media attention. Cameras are in their faces. They're already exposed to high-level expectation. And because of the pressure around Champs, it forces the coaches themselves to keep improving their craft. And as a result, the athletes benefit from improved coaching techniques and information and education, and it reflects in their performances. And what is very important now, because for years, I felt, a lot of persons felt the coaches were prioritizing performance over athletes' protection. I can say that I've seen a far greater effort over the last few years to, manage how athletes are their output during those 5 days of championships. People are in less events, and there's a greater appreciation for the physiological effects of that sort of competition, over a short space of time. What has been disappointing is that a lot of our coaches do prioritize Champs as opposed to the world youth events. And as you know, it's going to be difficult to peak someone for Champs and then peak them later on during the year, in the summer, for the world youth or, world under 20s. And so sometimes we don't see the best of our local athletes. When they get to the world level, they perform far below what we have seen them perform at Champs and other events earlier in the year. So, that's something I think we need to find a balance. But like I said, Champs deeply ingrained in the very fiber of Jamaican existence, not just track and field. It transcends track and field. And it means a lot to every single Jamaican. We know it's ours, we protect it. And, like I said, it prepares our athletes for the world stage.
No, it's very true. You mentioned how, competing at champs gets young athletes very much used to pressure and the media attention. Because, I was amazed. There's 5 days of competition. They're shown on national television, the front pages of the papers. They're all about champs. And everybody in Jamaica. We were visiting training camps at the time, and you'd hear the athletes, top athletes talking. Shelly-Ann Fraser-Price, she had ribbons in her hair, the color. I think she's Valmer of her school. And that's all they talk about. It really is something amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. You see kids' faces plastered on the sides of buses. You see them on full page ads. It's crazy, and like you said, the senior athletes, they're very invested. So it's similar to the American collegiate system. In the US, for instance, people are rabid almost about their colleges. In Jamaica, it's about their high schools, and particularly as it pertains to track and field. And you see a lot of the Olympians and the former students who are now international names committing a lot of time and effort and energy towards their respective schools or their adopted schools around Champs time. Because I went to Morant Bay High School, not a big name in Champs, but a name that has produced some greats like Juliette Cuthbert and, of course, Hansa Parchment now and others over the years. But they're not a contending school for Champs. And even though I don't have a second team, so to speak, that's not true for most Jamaicans. If your team is not a contending team, most Jamaicans adopt one of the contending teams, whether it's Jamaica College, Kingston College, Wolmer's, Edwin Allen, Homewood, whoever. So like I said, it transcends sport. It's a cultural thing, and it's one that and not just for Jamaica. You find too that Champs has an impact right across the region, because right now, Anna, there are so many students who are leaving St. Lucia, leaving the Cayman Islands, leaving US BVI, British BVI, Guyana, wherever, and they're in Jamaica at Jamaican high schools trying to further their athletic opportunities and competing at Champs and being exposed to these opportunities. And I think Champs is now not just helping Jamaican students and young athletes, but also developing athletes across the wider Caribbean. And that's something that doesn't get spoken about as much, but it's happening a lot more now. In fact, you have kids coming from Africa. Kingston College has a couple Ugandan athletes there and stuff, so it's truly international in every sense of the word.
Wow. I wasn't aware about that. That's really interesting.
Tremendous recruiting, international recruiting taking place these days.
Now, one thing, as you said, I've been twice to Champs, and the first time I was there, it was right in the year 2000. Already the World Juniors in Kingston had this unbelievable atmosphere in 2002. It was the first time I'd actually seen people climbing over the wall to get into the stadium because it was already sold out, and people still wanted to see it. And every time there was a Jamaican gold medal, and there were plenty, everybody in the stadium would be singing One Love. It was, something that gives you goosebumps. And the first time I was at Champs, it was similar. And you had the different schools. They had their own bands playing. It was quite amazing. Mm-hmm. Then when we came back, it was 2014. And by then, the Vuvuzela craze had taken over. So there was a lot of noise in the stadium, but it was mainly noise. I think there was one school, I think it was Calabar, who was still trying to, get their band going and singing and everything, but they were just drowned out by all the Vuvuzela noise.
Yeah, that was Kingston College. They're typically the ones with the drums and stuff close to the finish line.
Yeah, Kingston College, that's right. I remember, our photographer, Jean-Pierre, he was one morning that we hadn't been there, and he was like amazed. It's like, but our hotel was like 2 kilometers from the stadium. And you could hear the noise in there. The other days we hadn't noticed because we were at the stadium ourselves, but it really is something quite crazy.
Right.
Now, talking about talented youngsters, 14-year-old Sacier Sotomayor won the Spanish indoor under 16 championships on 27 March, clearing 191, improving his PB by 4 centimeters. And his only failures in the contest came at 195, which he tried and failed. His illustrious father, who still holds the world indoor and outdoor records with 245 and 243, set in 1993 and 1989 respectively, had already jumped 2 meters at the same age. So finally, as we review what's been happening over the last few weeks, let's take a look at road events, because there were many good performances registered in the last 2 weeks. In the Istanbul Half Marathon on 27 March, Kenya's Helen Obiri and Rogers Kwemoy took clear wins in 64:48 and 59:15 respectively. The following weekend was very busy with fast marathons on 3 April in Paris and Milano and half marathons in Berlin and Barcelona. The Paris Marathon went to Kenya's Judith Jeptum Korir with 2:19:48, well ahead of her competitors, with the first 13 athletes all running under 2 hours 30. The men's race had a much tighter finish, with Ethiopian Deso Gelmisa winning in 2:05:07 over compatriot Seifu Tura in 2:05:10. And the Milano Marathon saw another Kenyan double. Vivian Kiplagat won the race for the third time in 2:21:8, 2 minutes ahead of her rivals, while Titus Kipruto won a tight men's race in 2:05:05. In the Berlin Half Marathon, cold weather did not deter the Kenyan runners, who took clean sweeps in both the men and women's races. Sheila Chepkirui led the women's race in 65:02, and Alex Kibet took the men's race in 58:55, really fast. Among the runners in Berlin was athlete refugee Othman Nait Hamu, whom we see here at the start of the race. Othman continued his progression, improving his PB over the distance to 63:24, placing a very respectable 22nd. And finally, on the same day in Barcelona, victory went to Kenya's Margaret Kipkemboi in 65:26 on her debut at the distance, while the men's event saw a very close race, with the top 5 finishers all running under 59:18. 2 top spots went to Ethiopia's Haftu Teklu in 59:06 and Chala Regassa in 59:10. And a week later, on 10 April, it was joy for the Netherlands in Rotterdam, as Olympic silver medalist Abdi Nageye took victory in 2:04:56, just edging out Ethiopia's Leol Gebreselassie, who was given the same time. And Ethiopia's Haven Hailu Desse won the women's race in 2:22:01. Now, always on the roads, but in a race walk, the 22 World Race Walking Tour Gold events kicked off on 2 April in Podebrady, Czech Republic, with a race that celebrated its 90th edition. Not quite as impressive as the 112 of Champs, but still very traditional race. And it was a very successful day for Latin America, confirming their great showing at the World Race Walking Team Championships in Oman. Brazil's Caio Bonfim won a high-quality 20 kilometers race in 1:18:54, ahead of Sweden's Perseus Karlström with 1:19:42, and 5 athletes broke the 1:20 barrier. In the women's race, victory went to Mexico's Valeria Ortuño in 1:29:25, ahead of Germany's Saskia Feige, 1:29:57, and Ecuador's Joana Ordóñez, 1:29:58. And Latin America's success did not end here, as Mexico took both men and women's under 20 10-kilometer races, with Angel Montes finishing in 42:15 and 17-year-old Jimena Serrano in 45:20. Now, André, Caribbean athletes have made great strides in throwing events in the last decade. Any chance we'll be seeing race walkers from the area, as some are starting to emerge from Africa?
I mean, I wouldn't bet my house on it. We like to get where we're going very quickly, but on a serious note, it's about culture, right? That's one thing, and in events like these, you certainly need someone to kind of pioneer that success and make these events sexy. You look at the throws, for instance, it wasn't always considered desirable for high school athletes. No, let's talk about Jamaica. A lot of Jamaican high school athletes are getting involved in the shot put and the discus in particular because of the success they have seen from Jamaicans on the international stage. And I think that's what it would require. It would require someone just breaking that mold and going out there and achieving success, and that will encourage others to get involved and make the event for people in the region a little more sexy, right? Sexier, so to speak. So, but like I said, we don't have a strong culture here. I can't think of a single walking event in the region. and so there aren't many opportunities in any event for people here to develop that ability and that skill.
That's true, because I guess Africa, they're more exposed to it because African championships, you always had the North Africans, in particular Tunisia, who were quite good. So
Right.
that may have inspired Kenya's Gathimba, and he was a bronze medalist in Oman. So he's made great progress. So we'll see. But already, as I said, it's really cool to see how throws have taken over in the region, and of course, Kishorn Walcott's gold medal still as a junior in London Olympics also helped. And then you have, as you said, the Jamaican throwers who have been very good and very consistent over the years.
Exactly. Frederick Dakers, Daniel Thomas Dodd, doing excellent things in throws right now.
Yeah. Thank you, Andre. So sadly, 3 more former champions, all U.S. sprinters, have passed away over the last month. USA's Olympic medalist, Charles Edward Charlie Green, left us on 14 March, age 76. And he was really a part of world history. Yeah. He won gold at the 100 yards at the NCAA championships from 1965 to 1967. And in 1967, he equaled the 100-meter yards world record with that win with 9:91. The following year, Green twice equaled the world record in the 100 meters in an epic AAU championships in Sacramento in June 1968. First with 10 seconds flat in Heat 4 when Francis Roger Bambouk also clocked 10 flat in Heat 4. Then in the semifinal, Green clocked 9:99 and semifinal 1. But he was not the first to clock 9:91 because in the semifinal 1, Jim Hines and Ronnie Ray Smith, they were the first to break 10 seconds running 9.9. And at the Olympic Games on 14 October 1968, Hines took gold, again clocking 9.9, ahead of Jamaica's Lennox Miller and an injured Charlie Green, who was timed in 10:04 and 10:07, both rounded off at 10 flat. Hines was timed electronically in 9:95, and that mark became the first electronically timed performance accepted by the IAAF when electronic timing became official on the 1st of January 1977. As well as his individual bronze and at the Mexico City Olympics, Charlie Green was part of the U.S. relay team, which took gold in a record time. What an amazing career, wasn't it, Andre?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And I think it's important that we highlight the accomplishments of people like Charlie Green, who was, like you pointed out, and a pioneer of our sport. I mean, he transcended the sport, actually, in some respects. He was on the cover of Jet magazine, which wasn't very common In those days, of course, to be on, track and field athletes to be on the cover of magazines. And still one of the most iconic images with him in those sunglasses, which we know he referred to as his re-entry glasses. And when I saw the news and I was doing some reading on him, what struck me too was, and it's not something that you hear a lot, is what he did off the track, outside of the track when he left the sport. He devoted a lot of his time and efforts to the Special Olympics movement, and giving back to his community through mentorship and the coaching programs. So he really was a great ambassador for the sport, and I think his legacy is absolutely secured.
Yeah, definitely. And as you said, you mentioned the sunglasses. He was one of these athletes who had this extra flair, this charisma, and something that went beyond the track.
Exactly.
Now, another U.S. sprinter, George Seidner, passed away on 18 March, aged 86, after a battle with cancer. He had equaled the world best for this indoor 60 yards with 6.1 seconds twice in the space of a month in 1956, on 5 February and then again on 3 March. But this was not an official world record distance. Later that year, he was injured and missed selection for the 1956 Olympics. He was part of the Villanova University team that dominated Penn relays from 1956 to 1958. And after his athletics career, Seidner became the first African-American police officer at Radnor Township in 1964 and was a local civic leader. And finally, U.S. Olympic medalist Kirk Baptiste passed away on 24 March, aged 59. Baptiste was a 200-meter specialist who had won NCAA titles in 1984 and 85, gold in the U.S. relay in the World Cup in 1985, and gold in 200 at the World Indoors 1987 in Indianapolis. His biggest feat was probably the silver medal at the Olympic Games in Los Angeles, where he was second behind teammate and friend Carl Lewis, clocking 1996, which remained his PB. It was the first time an athlete broke 20 seconds and had been defeated, though this happened again in 1988, and then 96, 208, and 212, where all medalists all ran under 20 seconds. And you know who they are, aren't they?
Absolutely. All Jamaicans.
Exactly. That was one fantastic sweep.
Absolutely. Loved it.
Yeah. Now, finally, let's take a look at top events as we reach the end of our show. So on the next week, we have the next World Athletics Continental Tour Gold event taking place Mount Sac Relays on 16 April in Walnut. Then on 16 to 18 April, Carifta Games in Kingston, Jamaica. And on 18 April, Boston Marathon. Now, André, are you optimistic about the prospects at Carifta Games, as Jamaican prospects, especially after you will be in Kingston?
Yeah, I mean, and I'll be there for the last 2 days. With the Carifta, is always, credit to all the athletes, the brilliant young athletes from across the region, and coaches who dedicate a lot of time and effort and energy towards the meet. But it's no secret, when it comes to Carifta Games, there's just one dominant force, and that's Jamaica. It's always about how many medals will Jamaica win. Jamaica has been, like I said, extremely dominant at Carifta, and of course are the regional powerhouses, even at the senior level. This team is very powerful, like all the others before. You talk about Brianna Liston, we mentioned earlier, the Clayton twins, including, of course, the World Under 20 champion, Brian Lavelle, who a lot of people are very impressed with, Ryan Campbell, who ran 49.52, that's the world lead in the 400-meter hurdles. Jamaica has won over 1,600 medals in the 48 staging to date. No, that's basically more than the next 3 best teams combined, those teams being the Bahamas, Trinidad and Tobago, and Barbados. Jamaica actually has 770 gold medals. And Of the other 25 countries that have won gold medals, they have won 794 combined. So Jamaica alone, 770. Every other country that has won gold, 795. That speaks to just the level of dominance that the Jamaican juniors enjoyed character. But yeah, it's a big deal because there is a lot of camaraderie, but also fierce competition among the various islands that compete. There's a high spirit, and like I said, a high level of competition and culture that takes place every year. And at home, inside the national stadium, and from what I'm hearing, with good support expected, I think we're going to be seeing a lot of great performances and again, another dominant Jamaican show. But again, there are a lot of athletes from across the region who are doing very well, even in Jamaica at champs, winning events, setting records, stuff like that, and they're going to show their abilities as well. So it's not going to be just the Jamaican show. You're going to see excellent performances right across the board, and it's a beautiful stage, a great stage to look at and to witness firsthand some of tomorrow's stars from across the region.
Thank you, André.
You're welcome.
So we're now at the end of our show, and it was great having André with us.
Yeah, thank you. Always happy to pop in. Always great seeing you. Always great talking track and field. And like I said, it's an important platform, and I do wish you and the team all the best. In your endeavors.
Thank you, André. And thank you all for watching. And see you again in 2 weeks to look together at the highlights, comments, and analysis of what's been happening in our sport over the last fortnight. Thank you so much. Take care. Ciao, ciao.